Ibrahim Traoré's speech that changed how the world sees Africa. When Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the stage, the world expected a normal political speech. Simple words, polite sentences, and the usual promises that leaders make. But what came that day was something completely different. It was not a speech. It was a roar, a message that cut through Africa, echoed across Europe, and forced the world to stop and listen. The hall was silent. Thousands of young Africans watched him with hope, frustration, pride, and pain, all mixed together. The cameras from every corner of the continent were focused on one man, a soldier, a captain, a voice that the world had tried to ignore. And when he began speaking, even the breath in the room felt like it had stopped. Traoré did not talk like a politician. He spoke like a man who had walked through the fire, who had seen the suffering of his people with his own eyes, who had carried the weight of a nation on his shoulders. His voice was firm, steady, but burning with truth. He said, Africa has been told for 60 years that it is independent. Yet, look around. Is this independence? His words pierced the silence. He continued, our gold, our land, our minerals, our people, all used, all controlled, all exploited. And then they tell us we are free. For the first time in a long time, someone was saying what millions had felt, but were too afraid to speak. The world had always painted Africa as weak, unstable, corrupt, and dependent. But Traoré stood there and said, no, Africa is not weak. Africa is made weak. And those who made us weak expect us to thank them. His message was not political. It was personal. It was emotional. It was historical. It was revolutionary. He reminded the youth that Africa was not born yesterday. It was the land of empires, the land of kingdoms, the land of warriors, inventors, scientists, and leaders, long before colonial borders existed. Africa gave knowledge to the world, he said, and yet today, the world teaches us how to live. Then he spoke of dignity. He said that dignity is not given by foreign nations. Dignity is earned by standing tall, by refusing to bow, by refusing to be controlled, by taking back what belongs to you. He said, the youth of Africa will no longer accept humiliation. We will not accept lectures. We will not accept foreign masters disguised as partners. The hall erupted in applause. Every sentence hit like a hammer. Every word carried the frustration of decades. Every pause carried the weight of generations before him. Traoré then spoke about the African soldier, the young men who die on the front line, while foreign armies fly helicopters above them, watching, guiding, but never sacrificing. He said, if Africa must fight, then Africa must fight for Africa. If Africans must die, then they must die for their own land, not for the interests of outsiders. It was a line that shook the entire room. He pointed out how Africa's wealth is enough to feed the world, fuel the world, and power the world, but not enough to lift Africa itself out of poverty. Why? Because the wealth leaves the continent before it reaches the people. He said, the world fears an Africa that rises, not because they hate us, but because they need us weak. His voice deepened. They need our minerals, but not our independence. They need our land, but not our freedom. They need our young men, but not their strength. And then came the moment that made the world stop. Traoré said, if we continue to wait for permission to rise, Africa will never rise. The youth must no longer wait for leaders. The youth must become the leaders. The crowd erupted again. This was no longer a speech. It was a revolution in words. He spoke of unity not as a dream, but as a mission. He said that Africa must no longer see itself as 54 separate nations, but as one civilization split by borders drawn without consent. He said, when one African country suffers, all Africa suffers. When one stands, All must stand. Then he exposed the way foreign powers divide African nations. He said, they support conflict to sell weapons. They create chaos to steal resources. They build bases not for us, but for themselves. His voice rose, and we must say, enough. For many young Africans listening online, it felt like he was speaking directly to them, to the student who cannot find work, to the farmer who loses land to corporations, to the soldier who risks his life with no protection, to the mother who buries her son because of a war she never understood. He spoke of hope, too. He said this century is Africa's century, but only if Africa decides it will be. He urged the youth to educate themselves, not to impress the West, but to rebuild their own nations. He urged them to invent, to create, to fight corruption, to defend their identity, to stop apologizing for being African. He ended with a line the world will never forget. Africa is not rising tomorrow. Africa rises today. Those words shook the continent. Those words frightened the West. Those words inspired millions. Because for the first time in a long time, Africa heard a leader speak not in fear, but in courage. Not in dependence, but in power. Not in shame, but in pride. Traoré's speech changed how the world sees Africa. But more importantly, it changed how Africa sees itself.